Evening, everybody. I'm Don Landis. I'm an alcoholic. And I am your post-dinner, pre-comedy show talk, so I'm very unimportant, which is right in my wheelhouse, so thank you for that. And there's nothing like talking to a group of drunks that just overate, and including this one, so... But it's hard. You're sitting there and you're going, I shouldn't take that extra piece of roast beef. And it's almost like your hand gets possessed. But boy, everything was great. And what a day. If you've been here for the whole schedule today and you're not happy, I don't know what to do for you. We don't have anything else to offer. I mean, that was an outstanding day of recovery talks. I mean, we're going to, woo! I mean, I know I was sober when I got to Vegas, but I'm like super sober now. You know what I mean? And you hear a good talk and it just makes you want to join AA all over again. And that's kind of how I feel this week. And I'm just so proud to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm equally delighted I get the opportunity to share a little bit on my experience being a home group member. You know, and the title of this is the home group, the backbone of AA. Nothing could be more true. And this isn't, I want to get this out in front. I'm not putting down meetings. There's nothing wrong with meetings. Meetings have their place. I've gone to a lot of meetings, but we're talking about home groups. And, I'm not really going to get into the difference between those. But the main difference, just to take this, is a home group, the activities of the home group, the 12-step endeavors of that home group, extend beyond the time the meeting is scheduled and the geographical location of the home group. It's what we do outside of that 7 to 9:30 slot or that 8 to 9 o'clock slot on a Tuesday night. What are we doing there? And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I got sober in an Alano club, and so my real introduction to anything that resembled what happened in a home group was once a month. All the meetings would send a representative, and they'd have a business meeting, which my first sponsor in AA, insisted that I went to. And I didn't want to go to a business meeting. It sounded boring. Listen, if you're new in this room or newer in this room and you haven't been to a business meeting, for God's sakes, go. That is the cheapest show up early, get a donut. You'll watch these people that you think are spiritual giants that you've heard share about God and resurrection when they share in their meeting, and you'll watch them go toe to toe over $1.57. It is unbelievable. My first business meeting, these two old timers, and they were old timers, like one had 12 years, one had 16 years. They were old timers. And they were just going at it, and the voice is going up, and the adrenaline's going up, and I recognize it because I'm a street guy. I know what's coming next, man, and I'm chomping on my donut. It's getting good, and they kind of chill it out, and people say we should talk about this later, and they went on to the next piece of business, but that's okay because these guys are giving each other those dirty looks during the rest of the business meeting. I know what's going to happen, so I'm the first one out of the business meeting because I want to have a good view when they come out, when they collide, and they come out of the room, they got their arms around each other, and they're laughing. Oh, you really got me going in there, you son of a gun. And I'm like, where have I arrived? What the heck is this? And I didn't realize I had seen my first example of people putting aside their personal ideas, their personal ambition, their personal views for the sake of something we call unity. Now, when I was 2 years sober, I was lucky enough, I was living in Ventura County in Newberry Park. I'm going to a lot of AA. I'm going to 14 meetings a week, and I'm active. Just ask me. I'm secretary of a Sunday night speaker meeting. I book the speakers. I pay the rent. I take the Seventh Tradition Treasury. I set up the meeting. I put out the literature. I make the coffee. I clean up the meeting. I put everything away. I lock up the building. I give the secretary's report every Sunday night, and I say, commitments are an essential part of staying sober. We have open commitments at this meeting, and I would list the commitments: coffee maker, setup, cleanup, literature, speaker getter, and I would watch 150 people in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous sit there and say nothing. And when you're 2 years sober, and you're the guy driving around in a death trap van with the podium stuffed in the back, your ego will attach to anything. And your ego will tell you, well, at least I'm doing it right. And I thought I had a resentment. And I thought I was angry. And what I've come to understand is I was not angry and I was not resentful. I was lonely. There's nothing more lonely than doing service alone in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I've often likened it to digging a ditch. Anybody that's ever dug a ditch goes, that's terrible. There's nothing worse than digging a ditch. Anyone that's ever dug a ditch with a friend knows the ditch digs itself. You don't even notice it's being done because you're too busy having fun with your buddy. And that's service in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is designed to be done together. It is designed to be done in a group ethic. And I was lucky enough that at 2 years sober, I got 12-stepped again. I got 12-stepped on night number 2 of my sobriety, and then again at 2 years, because a good member of the Pacific Group, who I had met on the construction site, invited me to go to the Pacific Group in West Los Angeles and check out their meetings. And I'll tell you, I went to that group, and in 2 weeks, I fell in love with that group. And I remember my best friend in AA, a guy named Greg, who had 30 days when I walked in the door, and at the 2-year mark, we both loved AA. We both had experienced resurrection. Greg had gotten married, met a girl in AA, was best man in his wedding, you know. And I called up Greg after 2 weeks in the Pacific Group, and I said, dude, I found them. I found the people in the big book. You know that part where it says, there you'll meet your common, you'll take your common journey, and you'll go shoulder to shoulder, you'll make lifelong friends. I go, dude, it's going on there. And I remember talking to my best friend Greg and him going, I've heard about that group. That's that structured group, right? Where the sponsors tell you what to do. And he said, you know what, man, I didn't get sober to have somebody tell me how to run my life. And I said, wow, you had a plan when you got sober? Good for you. And I started my journey in the Pacific Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you what, people can get sober a lot of places. AA works everywhere. But one thing that made the Pacific Group and continues to make the Pacific Group unique, in my opinion, is you do 5 years in there and you're an active member, you're a member for life. You see, there's a big difference between a guy that's sober and goes to AA and a guy that's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, member of a home group. And I learned from the best, man. And I was busy in Alcoholics Anonymous immediately. I'm going to 6 meetings a week, man. I'm showing up early. I'm staying late. I'm making the lemonade at the yard where we play softball every Saturday. I did that for 7 years. I'm taking panels into Skid Row. I am busy. I'm starting to sponsor people. I get the secretary meetings in that group. And as all this is going on, this activity, as I'm so busy in AA, you would think I wouldn't have time for anything else. What's happening in my life? I start a business career that I'm not qualified for, and I learn how to do that. Why I go to AA and I'm active in a home group. I meet the woman of my dreams and I get married. Why I'm active in AA and going to meetings almost every night. You know, I mean, I'm paying back it's so funny. Eileen and I joke about this all the time. You know, we got married and she's hopelessly in debt. I'm hopelessly in debt. So we combined our hopelessly in debt. Now we're really in debt. It was not a move. We always said, do you think somebody in our families would have money? Nope, not a nickel. But you know, we're happy and we're in love. And by this time I'm 5 years sober and Eileen's knocking on 5 years. And, you know, my buddy Greg, you know, in the 3 years I'm in the Pacific Group, he had stopped going to AA. You know, he was one of those guys, man. He was 7 days a week, then 5 days a week, then 3 days a week, then once in a while, then once every 2 weeks, and maybe once a month he'd come by and pass his hands over the crowd. And now he doesn't go to AA anymore. And as he reduced his footprint in Alcoholics Anonymous, the explanations became more resentment-based. You know, I'm tired of hypocrisy in AA, and I don't think those people walk like they talk. And you know, me and my higher power, we're going to be fine. And I would talk to him about 12-step work. I said, where are you going to do that? Where are you going to find the drunks to work with? He goes, I'm doing fine, Donnie. And I got to tell you, I'm watching Greg, and his life is expanding. His career's taken off. It's promotion after promotion and new car after new car. And the next thing you know, he builds a custom house in Antelope Valley. And he's got money shooting out of his ears and 2 new cars in the driveway. And I get resentful. I'm resentful at my best friend in AA who doesn't go to AA anymore. And I start looking around at my life. What do? I get up early in the morning and I go to a job and I work hard. And then I go do AA all night. And then I meet with sponsees who won't listen to anything I ask them to do. And then I go home to my new wife and we're living in a 1-bedroom apartment on the west side of LA with 4 cats. rats living on top of each other. And if you want what I have and you're willing to go to any length to get it. And I'm looking at my best friend and I'm looking at his life just taking off. And I come to the conclusion, maybe I'm the chump. You know what? I think I am. Greg doesn't even go to AA anymore. He got the gift of sobriety. He's moved on with his life and he's doing great. He hasn't had a drink in the same time I haven't had a drink. He doesn't even have to go to AA. You know what? I am the chump. I'm the AA chump. I'm the guy that drank the lemonade and fell for all that stuff they told me. And I got a little resentment that I'm not talking about, and I'm envious of my best friend in AA who don't go to AA. And then I got the call at 6 years sober. It was from my first grand sponsor, and he said, hey man, Greg drank, he's not doing well, and he's asking for you. And we got him over at the house. And I threw Eileen in the car, and we drove about an hour and 20 minutes to where I used to live. And I went to my old grand sponsor's house, and I walked in, they said, we got him in the back room. And I went in the back room, man, and they only got one light on. And there's a guy sitting in a chair, and I could tell as I walked in the room, that's my buddy Greg. But he looked different. He looked smaller and beaten down. And the shoulders are rolled forward and the head's down on the chest, and I remember the posture. But he's mumbling something over and over again. I couldn't quite catch it when I walked in the room. As I got closer, it became clear, and he's saying, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And I grabbed my old grand sponsor and I go, is it time yet? What the hell is he talking about? He goes, oh, buddy. We picked him up. The first thing he did was snap a seizure. We can't get him into medical detox till 6 a.m. tomorrow. So we're giving him a thimble of vodka every 20 minutes to keep him this side of seizure till we get him in the medical detox. Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And I watched one of the smartest, coolest guys, most successful guys I'd ever met in AA that made being sober and pursuing your dreams more important than being a means. He made it look good. And I watched him broken on the wheel of active alcoholism, begging for a thimble of vodka. And never was I again to think of myself as the AA chump. Never was I to look at the things in Alcoholics Anonymous that I was doing and think that I had to do them. It became I got to do them. And I began to understand the old-timers that said that service is an honor and a privilege, because I watched what happened to somebody I love with all my heart walk away from a way of life. We checked Greg into detox the next morning at 6 a.m. and he checked himself out when no one was looking at 12. That was over 26 years ago, and I've been looking for my best friend in AA for 26 years. I don't know if he's alive or dead, and I don't know if he ever made it back to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I hope he did. And I hope somewhere he's got the gift back in place again. Because he didn't do anything wrong. He's a good man. I love the guy. We try to explain it when people don't understand the value of the things we talk about on a continuous loop in Alcoholics Anonymous. But doesn't it come down to a simple case of underestimation? Don't we simply underestimate what we're up against here in Alcoholics Anonymous? And so I continued my journey in the Pacific Group, an active member. And I didn't realize I was learning so many things that were going to apply to my life out in the business world, in my marriage, by being an active member in AA who took his membership seriously. Be where you say you're going to be. Do what you said you're going to do. The simple credo of the Pacific Group started to change my life. And business is going well. And my life is going well. And we buy our first house. And I'm going to AA and working with other alcoholics all the time. And as our life starts to go wider and wider and we get out of debt and now we're homeowners and we got a couple of bucks in the bank and Eileen starts her own business and that takes off and we're doing so well and we're going to AA every night. And we're showing up at the group moves and we're showing up at all these things and we're having all this experience. And in 2004, I'm just shy of 13 years sober. Eileen's 12 years sober, maybe a month. And Eileen got tired of living in L.A., and she wanted out. And we moved to the great Pacific Northwest, to Bellingham, Washington, 20 miles from the Canadian border, right? America's first defense against Canada. And we ended up there. And it's a culture shock on a lot of ways. And I got to tell you, I wasn't afraid to leave L.A. I was afraid to leave the Pacific Group. Because I got sober in clubhouse sobriety, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I had experienced the unity that we talk about in the first tradition. See, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. I saw a unity that I had not experienced previously in my sobriety, and I had experienced it for over a decade. I watched people set aside their ambition. I watched people set aside their personal goals. I watched people set aside their free time. I watched people set aside everything that other people will tell you is of importance in their life to promote unity within the group. People would do things in the group simply because the group did it. And they would say things like, I don't know that I need to do this, but I know that some newcomer can, and somebody has to be there to show them how it's done. I watched unity. I watched inclusivity. And it blew my hair back. And I was afraid to leave that. And I remember calling up the old man Clancy and saying, we're moving. And he said, yeah, I heard. And I said, I'd like to come talk to you about it. And he said, okay. And I made an appointment. I went down to the mission. And I said, do you have any advice? He goes, I do, kid. There's a couple of things you got to keep in mind. He goes, number one, they're not going to like you. And I said, why aren't they going to like me? He goes, well, you're from Southern California and you're from the Pacific group. And the other reason is, let's face it, you're not very likable. And I said, what do I do? And he says, leave your LA resume at home. Never talk about the Pacific group. Never talk about what we did. Never talk about our traditions. Never go there. Go there, roll up your sleeves, and work hard. Do that for a year, and then make your move. And that's what he told me. And Eileen and I had the gift of being two sober alcoholics, so we landed. And anybody in this room that's ever moved, that's left the warm cocoon of the sobriety that you're used to, and has moved to another town, knows what I'm about to say. They just don't do AA right, do they? I mean, it's shocking because somehow they've stayed sober for, some of them, decades upon decades upon decades, doing AA wrong. I remember getting there and going to meetings every night all over the county. I checked out every group I could possibly find, and they were all doing it wrong. The consistency of failure was amazing. And I thought to myself, I got here right in the nick of time. And I'm so grateful for the old timers in the Pacific group that told me I would have that reaction and also told me that it wasn't real. That there was nothing wrong with the way they were doing AA. And 18 years ago, I found a little meeting, not a group, a little meeting. And it was the SOS men's group. And it's a men's group where men are men. And the mental illness cannot be accurately measured. And we were a meeting because there were 12 of us and nobody wanted to commit to it as a home group, so it should have stayed a meeting. One of the worst things to happen is people get together and they think they have to register with New York and become a group. And they have no idea if their little venture is going to survive. They have no idea if anybody's going to actually commit to it. They have no idea if they're going to have any longevity. So by the time we decided to become a group, there were now 22 of us, and we had 10 of us that were willing to commit to that as our home group. We had somebody that was willing to commit to become the first GSR of the group. And we sent off to New York a new order form, which you fill out and you say, we're starting a group, and you send all your information. We got a beautiful package from New York, a GSR starter kit and a meeting starter kit. We had everything we needed to do to become a group. And we became a group in Alcoholics Anonymous. And now what do? And what we did is we kept opening up the doors and we kept showing up, and new guys started coming to our group. And we had a format that was enthusiastic. And slowly, over time, we started doing things. And I think this is where I want to talk a little bit about the fourth tradition. Each group is autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. I'm going to give you the short form of that. We can do anything we want as long as we take other groups into consideration, and AA as a whole, we're not hurting anybody. And what that gives you is freedom. The freedom we talk about, we're sober now, we're free. Do we take that same attitude into our home groups? Because that means We don't complain in our home group. What we do in our home group is we look for things that we need to change and things we need to add. So very slowly we started to do some stuff. The first thing we did is we wanted to be an active group in the service structure. So guys, not only did we have a GSR, we had a corrections and treatment rep. We had a literature rep. We had a public information cooperation with the professional community rep. And I watched these young men go into the District 11 and Area 72, Western Washington, into their monthly business meetings and come out with their eyes open and come out with new information and show up at our group. And the next thing we had to do is we had to give them time to share their experience with the group. So we have a monthly business meeting. There's a couple of things that we always have had at this monthly business meeting. Number one, the business meeting is after the main meeting, not before. When you have your business meeting before the meeting, there's a time constraint. And it makes people want to rush through the reports. It makes people feel that they're not being heard. We don't have a time limit. And we tell guys, hey man, if you got to get up early, you got somewhere to be, the door's right over there. No one's going to judge you until you leave. But feel free to go. But we're staying here till our business is done. And we have long business meetings. And we create an environment where our group reps who took the time to go to that monthly meeting can take the information back and help join us to AA as a whole in our district. Because we want to know what the committees are doing. We want to know what the other groups are doing. We want to know what their struggles are. We want to know what their successes are. So we started doing stuff like that. And then one time, one of the young guys came up to us and he said, you know what? We don't really study the traditions in this group. And I'll go, well, it comes up, and it's not. We really don't have a format. We're not really a literature study. We're a speaker meeting participation format. And the guy said, well, I'm going through them with my sponsor. I just think it would be good to do it in the group. So you know what we decided to do? We did a workshop. And we planned this workshop within our group. And I remember the guys going, all the young guys going, well, who's going to present? And all those old dogs went, well, you are. And they said, well, we don't know anything about the traditions. I go, exactly. Time to bone up, right? And I watched all these young men with no experience on the traditions spend their free time reading through the 12 and 12, asking old-timers questions, boning up on the tradition and we had a district-wide workshop. And I watched guys with anywhere from 6 months to 3 years present on one of the traditions and knock it out of the park. And I watched them suit up and present in front of a group, and I watched their voices full of enthusiasm. And more importantly, I watched the connection. I watched how they started to understand how important the traditions are to how our group is run and how we're formed. And I watched an expression of the first tradition in the unity. One of the ways you can find out about the health of your home group is a simple math equation. How many people attend your meeting, and what percentage of those people attend your business meeting? See, we average about 45 guys every Wednesday night at our home group. We have 35 guys at our business meeting. So we feel our health is pretty good. What's that's an indication to me is a very high percentage of the people that are claiming it as a home group or attend the meeting on a regular basis are invested in the health of the group. The other tradition I want to talk about is the second tradition. For our group purpose, there is one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. What does that mean? We want to know what God thinks about what we're doing. We want to know what God thinks about this motion that's in front of us. We want to know what God thinks about the business at the district level, at the area level, at New York, and everywhere. We want to know. But here's the problem with the business meeting that we have found. It's emotional. It gets heated. People have altering opinions. And dissension can pop up in a business meeting. And what we have done is we never vote on a motion that anybody brings in front of the group, whether it originated from the district or the area or from within the group. We will introduce it and we will talk about it till the cows come home, and then we will table it till the next month because there's no emergencies in AA. And there's a name for that in the service structure. It's called prayerful consideration. And we will take that motion and we will table it for prayerful consideration. Because what it does is it allows us to leave our business meeting where we know we're right. And it allows us to leave, and in the comfort of my own home and the quiet of my own mind, when the emotion drips out of me, I can think about what another home group member said. And I can think about what they were saying about it. And it's amazing how many times I walked out of that business meeting in my home group knowing I was right. All right? And a couple of days later, I went, man, I never thought of it that way, and I couldn't even hear them when they said it. And then we come back the next week and we're able to vote. And what we're hoping for with this prayerful consideration is that we bring our sponsors involved, because we believe God speaks to our sponsors, and it gives us a chance to talk to them about what's going on. And we're able to hit our knees and bring it into meditation. And we're able to really ask, what would God have me feel, do, or act about this particular motion or issue that's in front of my home group? We slow the process down. And I think we've come to believe that there's a speed to God's will, and there's a speed to self-will. And it seems to us that self-will is very reactionary. It's very fast. You give me a motion, I don't even have to hear the background information. I know how I feel about it. Oh, I'm never going to let that happen. Oh, not on my watch. Very reactive. But God's will is a contemplative speed. It's much slower. It takes consideration. It takes the pause that we learn about in the 11th step, where we learn that the language of God is silence and His address is the pause. So in the business of Alcoholics Anonymous in our home group, we have to create that space, that pause, and that silence. And it's very difficult to do during an active business meeting. That's why it's so important that we're willing to table things so we have time to think about what they really mean to us. Having said that, I'll tell you a personal story about me. As you might tell, I can be a handful. And you might think, oh, we like Don. He gives a good talk. I'm not in your home group. I have driven people crazy in my home group from time to time because I can be dominating. And I don't want to be dominating. That's not my goal. But boy, I get my emotions into things, and I just know I'm right. And I just know AA, as we know it, is going to end if this doesn't go the way I think it should go. About 10 years ago, I learned a really valuable lesson. There was a guy in our group at the time named Bobby, and Bobby and I were good friends. He's a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we had a bunch of business that night in the group, and I don't remember being any different than I normally am at the business meeting. And at the end of the meeting, we all were, in the parking lot talking, and Bobby comes up to me. He goes, "You got a minute?" And I said, "Sure, Bobby." He goes, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And we walk away over in the dark, and he goes, "Man, you got to stop talking at the business meeting." And I said, "What are you talking about, Bobby?" He goes, "Man, we had that motion in front of the group, and everybody talked about it for 20 minutes. And it was very obvious everybody thought it was a good idea, and they were going to vote on it, and it was going to pass. And then at the end of all that, you raise your hand, and in 3 minutes with your smooth talking, you change everybody's mind in the group." And he goes, "You got to stop doing that." And I remember just not reacting spiritually. Not thank you for the information. I'll take that. I'll make that a spiritual piece of business and talk to myself. I said, "Well, I'm sorry, Bobby. If you want me to hide my light under a bushel, I'll do it. But, if you got a problem with my ability to accurately convey my thoughts in a business meeting, take that up with God, because He made me." And once again, man, it's one of those things. It's that splinter in the mind. You just can't get rid of it, right? And you're just going, damn. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I realized I don't know the day that I went from just being a member of my group to being a bleeding deacon. I don't know what happened. And so I talked to people in AA that I knew that were elder statesmen and not bleeding deacons, and I said, "How do you do it?" And I was shocked at what they said, because they said almost verbatim what Bobby, who had about 4 years at the time, told me. He goes, "Well, the first thing you got to do is stop talking at your business meeting." You might as well have told me, cut off your left arm. If I don't talk at my business meeting, what purpose do I have there? I found out you actually learn more when you don't talk at your business meeting. And the other thing that it encourages, when I become just one among many instead of wearing the daddy pants at every business meeting I'm at, is suddenly the guys in the group start taking responsibility. The very guys I think won't do it, the very guys I'm afraid to turn it over to, the very guys that I think don't have what it takes, and why wouldn't I take and steer the ship because I'm sober the longest, I've been here the longest, I have the most experience. Those guys didn't need me. And I saw that these guys, regardless of how much time they had, they loved AA just as much as I did. And they wanted to do the thing just as much as I did. And they wanted us to be healthy just as much as I did. But the thing about AA, and the big book talks about this, right? It says if the new man or woman saw no fun about our way of life, they wouldn't want it. It says we absolutely insist upon joy in life. It says we're quite sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Well, what does that look like in the home group? And we jump back to the fourth tradition, don't we? We start opening our minds. What would be fun for the group? And in our group, we keep two things in mind: unity and inclusivity. We all go or none of us go. And so the first thing I brought forward to the guys, because it was something that came from my old men's stag in the Pacific group. And in the old men's stag, they used to have an activities chair. And sometimes they went bowling, and sometimes they went to the movies, and sometimes they did something. It was something for the guys to do outside of the meeting to build unity and let the new guys know there was a free way of life, a fun way of life. And the other thing they did is they made sure that they were always included. If a guy didn't have any money, the group paid for him. And there was a scholarship fund where guys could throw money in that maybe they couldn't go, but they wanted to make sure a newcomer had a ticket to the movies, or a newcomer had a ticket to go to whatever they're going to. So we start these activities. And guys go, well, what do we do? So I start looking for something, that's affordable. And down the road from Bellingham in Everett, Washington, there's a semi-pro hockey team. And I call up group sales, and you can get a ticket for $13. It's cheap, right? So I order up, I make up a sign-up sheet, and I take it to the group, and I tell the guys, here's the way it works, man. Everybody that wants to go, wife, kids, bring whoever you want. But if you put your name down there and a number of tickets, you're financially responsible for it. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. So don't make me come looking for you, right? And so first time we did it, 77 tickets get ordered. So I order 77 tickets on my credit card. And I go home and I tell Eileen, I go, just so you know, when you get the credit card bill, you're going to see a charge in there for about $1,000 to the Everett Silver Tips. That's for hockey tickets I bought for my group. I bought 77 tickets. And Eileen said, you bought 77 hockey tickets? You fronted them to alcoholics? I said, I absolutely did. She goes, you think they're going to pay? And I go, I absolutely do. And everybody paid. And we went to hockey, and we had a great time, and guys brought their girlfriends, and guys brought their wives, and guys brought their kids. You want to talk about unity? You know these guys when you go to meetings with them week after week after week. But man, when you see a guy you go to meetings with and you've never met his family, and you see him running down a hallway of a hockey arena, and he's got two little girls' hands in his hands, and the kids are swinging and singing and laughing, and he's all lit up like Christmas, and you see recovery in the family, and you got a front row seat for that resurrection, you start to realize how important it is that we find a way to involve our families in what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so we've been doing that for over 10 years, and we've done all kinds of crazy stuff. We don't just go to hockey. We've gone to the car races. We've gone to this. And the whole criteria is no ticket more than $20 because everybody gets to go. And if they don't have the $20, we pay for them. It's got to be everybody goes or nobody goes. It has to be inclusive, and we do that. And one year, there was a guy in our group that got he got involved in community theater, right? And so he tells us about it. And we go, group activity. 22 guys go to the local community theater, and we all dress up like this. And I mean, some of these guys are fresh out of prison. You know what I mean? It's like... And we're not your typical community theater crowd. We'll just say that. And we don't know how to act, man. God, he didn't come on till the second act, and he came on the stage, and three guys stood up and started applauding. And we had a blast. And we watched this fellowship grow up around us. And we go from a meeting to a group. And what do we look like today? What do we look like today, 18 years into this process where you go from meeting to a group? We're active in the service structure, and we're well represented at the district level. All of us have rotated in and out of different positions. New guys get involved in the service immediately. I'm currently serving as the alternate chair for the Third Legacy Committee. That's my current commitment at the district level, where we do inventories for different groups, and we put on workshops based on service-related topics throughout the district. And that's a gift that I get to have in my life for the rest of this year and next year, and I'm enjoying it. And I've been the chair of that committee before, and I love that kind of work. Our guys, we go on group moves, which is something, it's the funniest thing in the world, because We're, Alcoholics Anonymous, we help each other. But in our world, in our home group, it's a group activity. So when anybody moves in the group, we'll make a flyer. And it's something when some guy who, 2 years ago was out on the streets and he's out of the apartment and he's moving out of the halfway house and he's getting his own place and 30 guys show up on a Saturday morning. And we're all outside drinking coffee and eating donuts. And we got a big moving truck. And the same thing happens every time we do it. That thing gets loaded up in no time. We drive to a new place. It gets unloaded in no time. And then we always hear the story about the guy that moved. Because in the next couple of days, the neighbors will slowly percolate over to the door. And they'll knock on the door and they'll say, "Who are you?" Because I've moved before and I can't get anybody to help me. And we always say what we always say. I'm just a guy with a lot of friends. And that's who you become when you're an active member of a home group. So what are the responsibilities of an active member of a home group? There's a couple of things we talk about in my group. And if you don't do this in your group, doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. I'm just sharing my experience with what we do in our group. Sometimes we have an idea that comes in front of the group. The idea might be, hey, there's a treatment center that wants some groups to bring in a meeting on Friday night. How many of you think that's a good idea? And that's one vote. And then there's the next question. How many of you guys will actually go? That's another vote. Because in AA, we often think it's a great idea until we find out that what we're really voting on is whether or not we'll do it as an individual member of the group. So when we vote, we're not just voting that it's a good idea. We're voting that we're taking it on as a personal member that we're going to do what we vote for. And what that does is it builds unity. Everybody's in the same boat together. And so we continue to try to create these things that are fun, that are active, that create enthusiasm for the guys in the group. Years ago we were hemming and hawing and going back and forth about starting a men's retreat. And every time we'd start talking about it, guys would get scared about the money and it would get tabled and we'd just go away for another year. And finally one year I just said, listen, man, either we do it or we don't, but I don't know what we're afraid of. And so the guy said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And 2 weeks later, we had a meeting site. We had no money, but we had a contract. And I called up my friend Bob D. And I said, Bob, we're starting a men's retreat. Would you be our first speaker? And Bob came to the first inaugural SOS men's retreat. And that was, this will be our 8th one, even with the pandemic. We lost a couple of years because of that. This will be our 8th one this year. And Ralph W., who's sitting right here somewhere, Ralph's going to come with his brother Ronnie, and they're going to facilitate for us. And we're sold out 6 weeks before the event. And I mean, the enthusiasm. And you go, well, why did you start a men's retreat? Well, we didn't do it, as much as we love Bob and as much as we love hearing somebody that gifted take us through the steps. No offense, we got books in Bellingham. But we got a bigger problem than that. We always have our retreat in the dead of winter in Bellingham, Washington. Let me explain something to you about the Pacific Northwest in the dead of winter. There's a reason we lead the nation in suicide. I mean, it gets dark in February or in October and it don't get light again until April. You know what I mean? And it rains just about every day. And if it's not raining, it's steely gray days. And you can watch it affect your home group. I mean, guys, how's it going? Just waiting for spring, waiting for spring. And you can watch people just start getting depressed, where you come home and you realize your wife has hid the cutlery, It's like the knives will be out in April, It's it gets a little dark. And we were looking for something to do during the cold winter months that we could work on and look forward to. And we started this men's retreat. And now, the end of January is no longer a bad time for my group, the SOS Men's Group. We look forward to it because we start planning it in the summer. We start getting the word out. We start taking registrations and doing all that. And, now we're so happy about it. And it goes back to this 4th tradition that we have autonomy to do anything we want as long as it doesn't affect other groups or AA as a whole. And we do these things and we encourage our younger members because some of our best ideas come from our younger members. I mean, God, 5-6 years ago, probably seven years ago, when this guy was new in our group, he came up to me and he said, I got an idea for something. And he's like 3 months sober, right? And we go, okay, what's your idea? And he goes, how about a speaker pancake breakfast? And I said, that's a great idea. And he goes, would you help me put it together? I said, I'll absolutely help you to put it together. I only ask one thing. I go, I get to name it. And he said, okay, you can name it. So 7 years ago, we had the first annual Shivering Denizens of His Mad Realm speaker meeting and pancake breakfast in Bellingham, Washington. And we've had 3 or 4 of them since then. And we just had one a few months ago. It was well attended, and we made a big breakfast, and we invite the whole district. And what it is, we throw these little parties in AA. We take a moment to practice gratitude. We take a moment to play together. We take a moment to make sure our new friends know that it's not a death sentence, it's a life sentence. We love being sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. But we talk about inclusivity, but we talk about unity. We talk about showing up a half an hour early and staying a half an hour late. We talk about a home group members' responsibilities, that whatever the group's doing, whenever possible, try to participate in it. It's more fun when there's more of us. And we want to have that kind of unity. So we move in numbers because it helps us stay sober in the group ethic. And so this has been going on for a long time. And the other thing I want to talk about is money. And I don't know, I've always been confused by this in Alcoholics Anonymous, but somehow talking about money within our group is sometimes looked at as bad taste, our pandering, our soliciting. And we just don't want to talk about money. And you know, we went from a group or a meeting that was so small, we were barely able to pay our rent, have big books, and make coffee. But you know, now you look at us 18 years later, we got a great location, we got cheap rent, and we started talking about money on a group level a long time ago. And what we did is we empowered our treasurer. So every home group meeting, our treasurer makes an announcement. And we tell our treasurer to keep track of the money. And if things get a little thin, he doesn't give a heavy-handed report. He'll just give you the stats. Okay, this is our average attendance. This is our average donation. Just thought you guys want to know. And you just watch the donations go up. We empower our treasurer to be able to give a report. We want to know what we're doing with the money. And we want to know what is self-support in the eyes of AA. Because we understand it's not just we paid our bills, we paid for the coffee, we got big books to the meeting. We understand that $1 we drop in the basket, that $5 we drop in the basket, that travels all over the world. That AA's in all these different countries and all these different languages. And that didn't come from anywhere but group member donations. So we talk about the good that AA does. And the other thing we started to do probably 10 years ago, maybe longer, is we started participating in the AA birthday fund. Because we wanted to know what it's like to be self-supporting in the eyes of GSO. And at that time, 12, 14 years ago, we had a hard time getting a number from GSO. But as the years went on, we started to get a rough idea. And I remember the first time I ever got a number out of New York, somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 a month, but nobody knew. But we were grateful that now we had an idea, something to shoot for. So we used the birthday fund. And on our birthdays, when we celebrated the meeting, we'd give $1 for every year of sobriety, or a penny for every day. So either 365 cents per year or $1 a year. And that goes in a separate fund. That's the birthday fund that goes directly to GSO. And then we started expanding our thought. Wonderful. 10 years ago, we got to feel good about ourselves. Oh, we're self-supporting, right? At the GSO level, at the district level, at the area level, right? And guys get a little cocky about that. Remember, the ego will attach itself to anything. And we start hearing things about guys, right? You guys are sharing in meetings about, we're the highest donating group in the district. And so at the business meeting, we discuss that. And we say, listen, when you open your mouth in a meeting, realize that not everybody in our meeting is a member of our group. And so we don't badmouth other groups. We don't build ourselves up to make them look small. And the other thing is we talked to our members and said, you know why we're the highest donating group? We got cheap rent. We should be. And it started a conversation over 10 years ago about opening our minds to what really happens in AA. And I told the guys stories. I said, you got to realize that when we started out as a group, as a registered group, for 3 years we didn't make one donation to GSO. For 3 years we didn't make any donations to area. For 3 years, we barely made any donations to district. You know why that is? Because we were new, we didn't have a lot of members, and we were learning to walk. And you know what happened? The other groups in Alcoholics Anonymous picked up the load. And so they carried us. And now that we're doing better, we have to expand our thinking, don't we? And think about the groups that can't donate. It's not just about being self-supporting your group. It's about knowing where AA is financially and what your group is capable of honestly. And the thing that I find out is when they talk about the place that money and spirituality mixes is in the basket, it's alive and well at our group. Because guys talk about money. We're not afraid to talk about it. We don't shame anybody, but we talk about it so guys understand where that money goes. And there's something spiritual. I'm telling you, sometimes the most spiritual thing I'll do all week is I'm on the way to my home group. I'm halfway there, and this is my head. Damn it, I don't have any cash. And I stop at the ATM, and I get $20 so I have money to put in the basket. And I know what you're thinking. Well, we got PayPal at our group. I'm telling you, I don't believe in that. That's just me. I just jumped on the opinion box. You see me get 4 inches taller? I'm sorry. I think there's something spiritual about passing the basket. And if you don't think the new man or the new woman is watching you when that basket goes by, you're wrong. And I'll tell you another thing. It's like, don't throw in, $50 a month and that's your donation. Donate every week because every week they're watching you. I don't want to ever see a newcomer watch me pass the basket and not put anything in it. Because he doesn't know I throw in once a month. He doesn't know I write a check to the treasurer when nobody's looking. It's a visual demonstration of gratitude in action. I'm going to tell you a quick story about my home group and then I'm going to sit down. Just so you understand the quality of the raw material that you're working with when you talk about the SOS Men's Group. About 7 years ago, a couple of new guys washed up on the rocky shores of Alcoholics Anonymous at our front door, and that happens on a regular basis. And they were my favorite kind of newcomers, Matt and Ben. They were goofy, they were dying, and they were desperate. Right? And they were just entertaining as hell. Just the guys you fall in love. You knew when they were in the room. They're disruptive. They're either completely up here manic or down here depressed. They were just wonderful. And they're doing what newcomer guys do. And much to my surprise, I couldn't believe it. They got sponsors. And they started to walk upright. And they started to take commitments in the group. And they started to get a little bounce in their step and a little glint in their eye. And it's wonderful to walk the resurrection of a new man, get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. It was so gratifying. But they're doing the stuff that new guys do. You know what I mean? They're on Tinder cutting weak ones out of the herd. You know what I mean? They're going to the casino and gambling money they don't have. And one of the goofy things they were doing just to keep themselves occupied when they weren't in meetings is they ordered off of Amazon and they ordered a tattoo gun. And at this point, I want to notify you that neither one of them is a tattoo artist. So they're going home after meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and they're giving each other matching tattoos. And they're terrible. But they are so proud of these tattoos. They would come to the meeting, they'd show us their matching dumpster fire tattoos and they were such good entertainment. But I'll tell you, God is good. And we couldn't believe it. Matt and Ben, within a week of each other, both got a year of sobriety in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a party. We were so proud of these guys, right? And I talked to them after the meeting. I was telling them what a good job they had. And they're kind of full of themselves, as they should be, because they got a year. We got a year, but you never thought we'd make it. And I go, well, I was pulling for you guys, but I got to tell you, we see a lot of years in Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't see a lot of guys make it to 5. And I really think you need to pick your game up. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't know. Some of this silly stuff you're doing, if that continues into your sobriety, I don't know, man. You keep chasing the girls the way you're chasing the girls and doing the stuff you're doing and not putting this thing first in your life. I don't think you're going to make it to 5. I am actually concerned about you. I'm on your side, but I'm concerned about you. And I'm giving them a hard time, and they said, we're going to make it, we're going to make it. I said, I don't know, because I'll tell you what, I'm so worried about you. If you make it to 5 years, I'll tell you what, you can tattoo me. And that produced a light in their eyes that I had not previously seen before. And I remember thinking, it's 4 years away. They'll probably forget by then. They did not forget. And I want to explain something to you. I'm not a tattoo guy. I don't have a tattoo anywhere on my body at that point. And the years go by, and they get 3 years in the program, and my phone rings at 3:30 in the morning, and it's Matt calling, and I think there's something wrong, and I go, hello, and I hear Matt's voice go, I haven't forgotten. And he hangs up. When they got 4 years, Ben's taking his coin from his sponsor, and he finds me in the audience, and he goes, and the year that I turned 30 years sober, Matt and Ben got 5 years in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my home group threw me a big party, man, when I turned 30, and everybody was there. My sponsor, my wife, my sponsees, their sponsees, all the guys in my home group. We got together, we had this big party with great food and a cake, and it was just a festival. And there showed up Matt and Ben with their tattoo kit. And in front of my sponsor, my wife, my sponsees, everybody in my home group, they tattooed me. And I'd love to tell you, it was a work of art. It's horrible. It's a city jail. The guy was on meth for 3 days and one bad eye tattoo, right? I'll tell you, my wife came around the corner and Matt's bringing the needle down on my leg, and my wife just went, oh, Jesus, and walked away. She's seen enough of this silliness, and they got it on videotape. I was of such service to these guys. But that's not the end of the story. They get done. They're wiping the blood away and everything. And Matt had given me the tattoo, and his running partner, Ben, walks over and he's looking at it. And I said, what do you think, Ben? He goes, it's not bad. It's not as good as mine, though. Now, the tattoo they gave me was my wife's initial with a heart drawn around it. Ben stands in front of me, pulls up his shorts, and on the top of his thigh is my wife's initial with a heart drawn around it. And I said, Ben, why in the hell would you get my wife's initial tattooed on your body? And he looked at me like I was an idiot. And he said, well, he had to practice. If you're ever in Bellingham, Washington on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, please join us at the SOS Men's Group. We'll make you feel welcome. Thanks for listening.